Hey guys, welcome back to the Power Play. This is Katie, Daisy, and Chris. And be sure to follow us on Twitter as well, which is at the Power Play 14. We'll be trying to keep you guys updated as the season goes on, and also about our shows every week, which is Monday from 8 to 9. So coming back into this segment, we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic whenever it comes to professional sports, and that is injuries. And we have quite a few of those, some still left over from the Olympic break, some that are pretty recent. So who do we got up first? What's our big injury story tonight? I think I heard something about Pavel Datsyuk is still out.
Still out. He's going to be out for the next 3 weeks. The Red Wings seem to be kind of struggling with their injuries. I mean, Datsyuk is obviously a huge contributor to the team, and another 3 weeks, especially with the playoffs, like we're mentioning, being in 6 weeks, that's half the time until the playoffs. It could really make an impact on them.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's a big one. And then if we're gonna talk local about the Penguins, I think Paul Martin is still out, and that's again carrying over from the Olympics, and I don't even have to say it, but, Dupuis out, like we talked about that with trades, looking to fill in his spot. And we do have a couple players that are, going to be coming back soon. I guess Bo Bennett this morning said that he should hope to be back within the next week and a half. But my concern for a player like that is he's been out since November, and he's only second to Thomas Vokoun with a blood clot for a number of games missed this season. So how ready do you think he's going to be to jump back in, and how effective do you think he's going to be after missing so much time?
I feel like he's going to come back in, and it'll probably take him a few games to sort of get his normal amount of ice time. I'm sure they'll probably allow him sort of a few minutes less each game, just to make sure he's ready. I haven't seen him skate personally, but I heard sort of a few weeks ago he was still favoring that one rest. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of how strong his wrist feels. I'm sure they're not going to bring him back if he's not 100%. And he's still got a couple of weeks to get everything right. I don't see them sending him down if it's to get experience. I see him just playing the rest of the year in the NHL. But I feel like he'll be fine. If he feels any complications with the wrist, I'm sure he'll let the staff know, and they'll sit him out. But if he's ready to come back and the staff are ready to put him back, I don't see any issues with him. I'm sure it'll take him a while to get back into everything, but he's a great player, and you expect him to be back at his best when he comes back.
That's the thing. It almost makes me nervous because I believe he had been skating with the team, correct me if I'm wrong, for a couple times, and then suffered his setback and had been skating by himself either before or after practice for a while. It makes me nervous that I hope he's actually healed. He's missed all these games, and he did suffer from the setback complications with his wrist a couple weeks back. I think he's a great asset to the team, and I just don't want anything else to happen. I just hope that he's 100% ready before he does come back.
I think the one thing, though, that he kind of has going against his favor is he doesn't have a lot of NHL experience. So, missing almost half the season and then coming back in and trying to jump right into the playoffs almost, it might be a little difficult for him. But what he does have going in his favor is he's young. He's been building up his strength, and, practicing with the team, obviously that's going to help. So it'll be interesting to see how he does when he comes back. But he got off to a great start in the playoffs last year, and, he was a huge asset to the team during the shortened season. So you never know. I think it's kind of a toss-up at this point. I'll have to see what he looks like when he actually skates.
An update on the Pittsburgh game. Chris Kunitz scored, and so Pittsburgh is back up 3-2.
And another notable injury, if you're getting away from the Penguins again, Marian Hossa from the Chicago Blackhawks. He still hasn't started skating yet. He is suffering from an upper body injury. He hasn't started skating. Didn't start skating as of the update on the 5th. What do you guys think about the Blackhawks? I think they're a huge contender, and are they missing Hossa?
I definitely agree with you that they are a huge contender. They played a great game during the Stadium Series against the Pens, and they've been a powerhouse all year. And I think at this point, Hossa he's an asset, but I don't think he's absolutely critical to their postseason run at this point. They've got a very, very strong core of players on that team, and that's why they've been so successful, not just this season, but in seasons past. So, yeah, they're going to miss him at times, and they're going to miss him in certain situations, but I don't think that everyone's going to be dwelling on the fact that he's not ready to go yet.
And he's one of those players which adds a lot to the team when he's back, and he's in the starting lineup. He adds a lot to that team. But as you said, Katie, that team's functioning perfectly fine right now. I'm sure they'd welcome him back in a heartbeat. But unless he's back, then there's no point worrying about life without him. You're gonna have to continue. If he comes back, he comes back. But at the moment, Chicago looks great, and I don't think they'll have a problem with it without him.
I definitely see Chicago as another cup contender this year at this point in the season, and it'd be great to have Hossa back for them. But if he's not ready to go in time and he doesn't produce well, then I really don't think it's going to be that big of an issue.
And one of the biggest injuries I think that came out of the Olympics, John Tavares suffered from a torn MCL and a torn meniscus during the Olympics, and will need surgery to repair his knee, as reports Arthur Staple of Newsday. That was updated the 25th. No current update regarding his surgery. What do you guys think about that? Another Olympic injury.
I mean, I think you look at the New York Islanders, they've got a couple players that always really stand out and kind of carry the team, and John Tavares is one of them. So, unlike Chicago, that's going to be an injury that I think that they're going to be looking at pretty closely, and they're going to be thinking about for a while in these last couple weeks here. So, yeah, that's a huge loss. And those are not small injuries either. A torn meniscus and any kind of an MCL, ACL injury, that's going to take a while to rehab and come back from that, even though he did not need knee surgery for it. So, I don't know. Tough blow for New York on that one.
Do you feel like it would be a bit more of a major injury if the Islanders had a hope of making the playoffs? Do you feel like we'd be talking about the Olympics and injuries a bit more if it happened to teams that had a legitimate title shot?
I think it would be more for the teams that were questionable. I guess that's kind of what you were saying, Chicago, I don't think anybody's questioning whether they're going to make the playoffs, and the Penguins at this point, I don't think anybody's questioning whether they're going to make the playoffs. But for a team like the Islanders, yeah, I think if they were kind of on the fence right now, at this point, it's not looking too promising. But if they were on the fence and that was the deciding factor, then yeah, I think it would be a bigger deal.
They're currently 7 games back of Columbus for that last playoff spot. But at the same time, we all remember the so-called haters of the Olympics when these injuries came out a couple of weeks ago. It's just whenever an injury happens and it's due to the Olympics, everyone just jumps up and down and complains. So it's sad to see it happen to such a good player. But at the same time, injuries happen, and it's just unfortunate that it happened to the Islanders, and the Islanders have their own problems right now to manage in their active lineup.
I think my last injury update in what I feel like was the biggest injury of the Olympics, though I suppose it had been going on for a while prior to the Olympics, was Henrik Zetterberg, also of the Detroit Red Wings with Datsuk as well, underwent surgery to remove part of the disc in his back that was giving him issues. But the Red Wings are optimistic that he's going to be able to play again this season, which is really interesting to me because I always cringe personally, having suffered a back injury like that. It's not something you can bounce back from, especially in such a contact sport. It's interesting to me that they are confident he's going to play again, even this season. I mean, I'm sure he's going to play again, but just this season and recovering from a back injury, especially one that had been giving him issues for so long, surgery or not.
And also, Zetterberg's not really that young either. I mean, he's 34 years old, and for an NHL player, that's kind of getting up there in age. So to be able to come back and bounce back from a back injury, and then have the team say, "Oh yeah, like we're confident he's going to come back," I don't know. That's one you're going to have to keep your eye on.
Do you bring him back if Detroit falls completely out of playoff contention, or do you let's say they drop 4 out of the next 5 games and fall sort of 5 games behind Columbus? Do you bring him back?
Speaking from a back injury standpoint, and I mean, I obviously didn't suffer the same injury as Zetterberg, and I'm not a hockey player, but in that case, no. I would let him rest with something like that, absolutely.
I think if they were absolutely certain that they were not going to make the playoffs, I would say keep him out, get him back to full strength, and make sure he's totally healthy before you put him in any kind of game situation. But when the playoffs are on the line, you got some tough calls to make, and you got to do what you got to do.
And at the end of the day, the call's going to be down to him. If he doesn't feel comfortable playing, they're going to give the last word to him. If his surgery went well and he comes back and he feels all right and he wants to play and he proves that he can play, put him in. But at that same time, if you fall a couple games behind and it looks like you're not going to make the playoffs, I'd say keep him out. So if you've got a better chance next year of having a healthy Zetterberg making a bigger impact on the team than you do for him coming back for sort of 4 or 5 games.
He only had surgery. He had surgery on the 21st of February, so like 2.5 weeks ago, and they're already kind of releasing a statement that they're confident he's going to be back. So maybe he's showing signs of healing and progressing already. I'm certain he's not back on the ice after this surgery already. So I think it's kind of a bold statement of them to make, especially in this case of this injury, but it's interesting. But I think if they're absolutely sure they're not going to be in the playoffs, keep him out, let him heal. Back injuries are pretty serious, and I just think, especially for his age, like you mentioned, Katie, that it's just better in that case to leave him out.
Well, we all remember when the Penn said that Letang was going to be back in 6 weeks from his stroke. So I'm sure that they'd like Zetterberg to be back, but we'll see how long the healing actually takes.
Yeah, and I think you also have to take into account, the doctors can say, oh, you're not ready to play yet, but like Letang, and whenever he gave his statement, he seemed very optimistic that he was going to be back in playing form when the Penguins thought he was going to be back in. So if he's ready to go, and he proves that he's ready to go, who's there to hold him back? So, but that's something, like having a back surgery like that and having a stroke even. I mean, that's a little bit bigger than even having back surgery, and it's not always easy to bounce back from. But the one thing Letang has, I think, over Zetterberg is he is a lot younger, and he is in very good shape. Not saying Zetterberg isn't, but I think age is a huge factor in that situation.
I agree, and I feel like we'll see. Sort of Zetterberg is a good player, and sort of 34. I'm not saying he's moving on in age, but if he has 5-6 years left in his career, he might just want to sort of make sure his back injury gets settled, comes back next year, and guarantees that he still has a couple of healthy years. You don't want to come back and rush on like that, because if he rushes that and there's more surgery involved, then you got to start worrying about years off the end of your career, and I don't think Zetterberg will do that to himself.
We are going to go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to head into our rant segment with a seemingly absent Jake. I hear word that it may or may not be his 21st birthday, so I believe Chris is going to find something to rant about. So we will be right back. If you're not following us on Twitter, give us a follow. We're at the Power Play 14. This is Daisy, Chris, and Katie. We're the Power Play on WDSR.